Please note, for maximum picture quality, it may be necessary to adjust the tracking control on your VCR.
The heist movie is a staple of cinema. We all know the tropes. There's the immeasurable fortune, an elaborately timed plan, a crack team of enigmatic thieves. This film is like the urtext for the modern heist film. So put on your big suit, tilt that fedora and spark up a gaulois. Bonvenue dans le film noir français. And this is Adjust Your Tracking, a podcast and we're on an adventure to watch a century of cinema decade by decade, year by year. I am one half of your hosts, Liam Delaney, and with me, back again, is my good friend...
Oliver Jones. I'm back, baby! I'm
back from quarantine or whatever it was.
Plasticine quarantine.
Plasticine quarantine, locked up with your little fingers touching little figures all
little
the time.
Fingers?
Little fingers, your little plasticine
That's
fingers.
what they call me in the animation world, Little Fingers Jones.
touchy.
Touchy. No, I'm not John Lasseter. Don't paint me with that brush.
Hugs and kisses. John Lasseter, hugs and kisses.
I like to hug my plasticine models. That's what I like to do.
And I saw recently you were interviewed by a German person. That was fun.
I was, and I was also interviewed by an LA person on a podcast called the Disaster Party Podcast.
What's that podcast about? Come on us and talk about your disaster.
No, I don't know why they call it that, but it was alright.
Is that assumingly that we've hinted at it because you got a new music video out?
I have, yeah. It's called Puke Box by, again, the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets. So, yeah, check it out. But more importantly, it's Liam's birthday today. Hey!
Thank you. It is.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday. And who's that dulcet tones joining in the song?
Oh, shit.
I don't know. Who's this mysterious man?
I've been rumbled. Hello, my name is Paul. I've been here before. I'm also back.
I don't know why I'm treating it like it's an open room and someone's walked in. Oh, who's this?
I'm going to put a sound effect of a door opening with a bit of snow.
Oh, I didn't see you there. We're just recording a podcast.
Come on in. Come and sit down and talk about films. Everyone's favourite topic. Films from the 50s.
I love talking about films, and it's so rare that I get to talk about films from the 50s, especially since I'm not sure if I've seen more than one film from the 50s. I probably have. I'm sure, I've been alive for a while. It probably happened. But,
judging from the downloads for this series, you and everyone else.
Hey, it's for the art, right? It's for the art.
It is.
Yeah.
I think it's mainly for my mental health at this point.
There's worse reasons. There's worse reasons to do it.
A year sitting on this desk, and just people calling me. Hello.
It's
a different topic.
It's funny. I don't think the people listening to this will be interested, but I do have a podcast that's based on marketing for indie games and the field what I work in. And we've basically wrapped it up now. We did it for a year last year. We managed 10 episodes in a year on different topics and things, and we released the last one in December. And I kind of miss doing it already. I think I need a new excuse to chat nonsense into a microphone.
I miss it when we take a break. It's nice because sometimes when we're full on, it can get a bit oh crap, I've got to record this week. Oh crap, I've got a 7-hour film to watch. But I do miss it when we're not recording. It's a nice thing to actually do.
Yeah, it's been I haven't watched a film until this week. I hadn't watched any films for 5 weeks, so it was nice just to actually sit down and actually watch a film for once.
So tell us about the making the music video and stuff like that. Then.
Oh God, it's pretty much the same process as before, Right. But I think me and Brandon have got it down now. I think I'm really pleased with the last one. I think it's pretty good.
I thought it was awesome. I think it's there's so much. I'm not good at talking about claymation, but there's so much smoothness to it. It feels like full of energy, real kinetic, which I imagine is hard to do really with clay.
I've watched a lot of my contemporaries, and don't get me wrong, their work's fantastic, but they kind of limit themselves to one set and kind of just similar angles. Whereas I did the silly thing of there's not one shot repeated, and there's lots of shit going on. So I don't advise making it the way I make it. But
yeah, but I think I personally, maybe I'm biased, but I think your work is a step above what I see other people doing with like clay stuff. And I just think you and Brandon as well. I want to praise Brandon as well, because I think that his composites and stuff like that I think both of you make such a good team of putting this stuff together. Like, and I think it's really engaging and really cool. And honestly, everyone check it out. Like,
yeah, what was cool about this one was like like on the first two, I probably had notes to give him like on each pass of like the effects and stuff like that. But like on the third one, he'd send it me, and I'm like, right, that's done. Next one. Like, he's just on it now. Like, we're kind of like really in sync. So I'm hoping like maybe not just yet, but I'm hoping we get some more work off this and we can work together on
imagine
stuff.
Not just yet.
I'm sure Mastodon have got an album coming out soon. I'm trying to prod that. I have no idea how to do it, but I think me and Mastodon would be a good combo.
A good fit. God, that'd be awesome. That'd be so cool. Are you kind of prodding people at the moment, saying, "Hey, I can film actors as well. How about that? Have you heard of this thing called live action? I can do this."
No, to be honest, if I'm kind of happy now. I think I've found my niche now. I think my thing now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I don't like going out anyway, so I'm happy just to stay inside and manipulate little armature people. So yeah, no, I'm not saying I won't do any live action ever again, but I think my sensibilities come out much better in that form. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, directing is probably a lot about communication when you're on set. And if you're just doing like animation stuff, you're talking to yourself,
Pretty much, yeah.
Because you're in charge of all the acting as well as everything else, really. So
yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, rather than
there's definitely been times when Jones has been filming me that I feel like he would have preferred it if I was just a lump of clay that he could just sink his fingers into. But that's more about mine and Jones's personal relationship.
He doesn't stop him sinking his fingers in.
Yeah, but he would have preferred if I was. Yeah, he didn't know it at the time, but life's a journey of self-discovery.
But yeah, anyway, check the video out. You have to watch the other two parts because it's kind of like a concluding part to a trilogy. And I think for me, like the first video, I was really happy with like how that story progressed, but I think the animation's a bit rough and that's only because I had like 2 weeks to make that one. I think the second one I'm happy with it, but I think it's so fast paced that it's kind of a bit hard to kind of decipher what's going on. But I think we kind of nailed down both aspects of animation and like story on this one, so I'm happy with it.
Yeah, and like I can see all the interviews you're doing as well. It's always the same questions, like that people who make trilogies do, which I really like. Like it's always, so you conceived this from the start, and all these characters came together and stuff like that. I always like this.
Like all trilogies, it wasn't planned as a trilogy. Obviously, it was just. But I have to say, I think we've made one of the better concluding parts to a trilogy.
Yeah, it's better than
Take That, Matrix.
It's better than Rise of Skywalker.
Oh God.
Hey, I like the cowboy Back to the Future. All right, I think it was fun. It was fun. I was trying to think of a trilogy. I was trying to think of one. I was trying to think of one I could be controversial about, and that's what I landed on.
No, I like Back to the Future 3. I like Back to the Future 3 quite a lot. I can't.
That was my ZZ Top impression.
Why don't ZZ Top appear in more films? That's a question for Hollywood. Why aren't they in every film?
Do you know what I love about ZZ Top? I thought, they're going to be proper rednecky kind of right wing kind of folks, but no, apparently they're really kind of quite lefty, aren't they?
I didn't know. I've never gone down the ZZ Top.
Well, I thought they'd be very pro-Trump and all that, but no, they're the complete opposite. I was like,
I can imagine
ZZ
them
Top.
being old school Republicans rather than Trumpies.
Right.
So I can imagine that about them. Like, it's people who like, I'm still Republican, but I just don't vote for whatever the Republican Party is at the moment. Which I know a few people like that.
So, have you watched anything recently, Liam?
I mean, I've watched loads of stuff, which obviously if I spoke about it, we'd be here for about 4 hours. So let's not do that. But I think one film I really want to bring up, because I don't think I mentioned it before. I mentioned some stuff I've watched with like Natalie and maybe with Brandon as well. But one thing I've watched really recently that's... Okay, I'm going to mention 2 things that I've watched really recently.
It's fine.
Is The Kid Detective.
Right.
By Evan Morgan. It's fucking wonderful. Like, it's one of my favourite films from 2020. It's in the top 5 easily. It stars Adam Brody as the lead character, and he's like...
Oh, I have heard of this.
He's a guy who was a kid detective when he was in school, and he's still like living his life from the glory of being this kid detective. So, you know, like a proper kind of like, it's like someone's stolen some supplies from this teacher's office or something, or like someone hadn't done his homework, and like really stupid like kid
kind of like
crimes.
That Donald Glover, you know that film, what was it, Mystery Team?
Mystery Team, yeah, similar. But he's grown up to be an actual detective, but he's never actually been kind of a good detective. He's really depressed, he's really down on his life and stuff like that. And basically and all because there was one case from when he was a kid detective that he never solved. Basically,
that sounds great. I always love like when media kind of when it's a case of like, let's try and apply story logic to the real world. Yes. Almost like I think it's always just such a fun juxtaposition, I guess is the word.
And I'm such a fan of PI films. I love them. Like I love the kid detective trope. I absolutely adore it. It's one of my favorite things about Venture Brothers, the kind of like kid hero stuff. If I ever sat down and wrote something, it probably would be something like that, because I just for some reason I adore that trope. And this fits into that so well that it was one of those films that I wish I'd written this. Like, that's how much I liked it. And I really, really, really recommend it. I really, really recommend it. It's super. So, and the other film I watched the other day was The News of the World, starring Tom Hanks by Paul Greengrass.
Is this the second part of his newspaper trilogy?
What was his first part of his newspaper trilogy?
The Post, wasn't it?
Oh, I thought you meant Paul Greengrass.
No.
Born newspaper. Yes, I guess it is the second part of the newspaper trilogy. I loved it. Like, it's set in like kind of just post Civil War America in the South. Tom Hanks is playing a Confederate general who's obviously no longer in the Confederate Army, but he's just traveling town to town, and he's a newsie. He reads the news to people, because obviously like literacy is kind of low in these places. So he literally just gets given the newspapers, what's published around there, and he performs it to people. And I want Tom Hanks to read me the news every day. Like, I could have watched a whole film of him just reading news stories out. Like, it's so engaging. The rest of the film is good. I really liked it. I can understand why people wouldn't like it. It's really not like Paul Greengrass. It's not like a Paul Greengrass film. He's trying.
So it's not like
different
2-second cuts, and it's like
no
handheld.
There's a lot. There is moments like that, but most of it is these long stretches of looking at like this kind, the post Civil War South, these plains, these areas of like wilderness and deserts and stuff like that. Places I'd love to go visit in America, honestly. And a lot of it is about the kind of tensions that have arisen after the Civil War, these little pockets of self-governance, the relationships with native people, and the relationships of immigrants in that time period as well, because obviously America was full of immigrants every time period. And I just adored it. I just had one of those films where I put it on, I didn't expect to think much of it, and then I was just engrossed by it. And it's not getting great reviews, but I can understand them, but I don't totally agree. For me, it was total film I like to watch, and Tom Hanks is wonderful. So so they're my 2 recommendations as well, for if you've not been watching films for 2 months, Ollie.
No, I definitely want to check out The Kid Detective.
I think you'll love it, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, I've only watched a few. I watched Tenant finally.
Oh, okay.
And despite all its glaring flaws, and there are a lot of flaws in this film, like, I don't think the lead character, like, I don't think Washington is that great in it, but I don't think he's helped by quite a bit of a lackluster script for him, to be honest. For the fact he's just called protagonist. Like he's really good in BlacKkKlansman, but like he just didn't work for me fully in this one. But
I think he's really good in Tenet, but it's not a performance. It's not a showy performance.
Yeah, I mean Patterson gets that though, doesn't he? So he gets
Patterson falls in it. He does.
But just the idea and the concept behind it, I loved.
Sure.
Like, you know, it kind of... And I thought Branagh was great as this kind of like over-the-top kind of Bond-like villain. I didn't think Elizabeth Debicki was very good. I like how tall she is, and they kind of lean into that she's quite imposing over people.
I like the fact that there's a scene in the film that is literally her opening a car with her feet from sitting in the back of the film. Like, basically the film's like, look at this woman, she's tall.
But like, she came across a bit awkward, and I don't know if that's just kind of Nolan.
Script.
Yeah. And I just wish he kind of either got his brother involved or someone that can kind of at least help shape.
Yeah, you're right. The script just isn't there, and the script just isn't there. But I didn't hate watching it. Like, it is too long, and then there is stuff about it that I'm like, it's kind of funny how we always criticise Nolan about dead wife films, and this film is again, all about that, like all about it.
But like,
I don't know.
I can't the one thing I can't fault him because he's making these massive movies that aren't based on original, like on already existing IP, and I love the fact that he's making these big films that are original. And
I do wonder if it'd be different if we'd watched it at cinema, if I'd been more engrossed in it.
Possibly with Tom Cruise.
Yes, God, that's the best video for 20. That's Oscar winning.
That's my favourite.
It's my favourite film of 2020.
You have to the sequel though, where he goes off on one on the crew of Mission Impossible 20 or whatever it is.
Oh, Tom Hanks.
And then the other film I watched,
Tom Cruise.
The other film I watched, it's cool. It's the total opposite though, and it's called PG Psycho Gorman.
Okay.
And it's kind of like, it's like a low budget film, and came out last year or this year, I don't know. But it's about this these two kids who dig up a monster in their garden.
Is this the one that's underwater?
Underwater?
Yeah.
No,
it's like
no.
a water monster.
This film is kind of like, it's kind of made to look like a 90s kind of Nickelodeon TV show film.
Okay.
But it's really violent and really gory. And all the effects are like practical, so there's a lot of like costumes and stop motion. Like all the monsters in it look like they're from Power Rangers. And and the tone of it is kind of like Freaked or The Gate or Monster Squad, but mixed with like Tim and Eric and Turbo Kid and Hellraiser. And like it's got a theme song in it that's like Turtle Power from the Ninja Turtles. So it's totally in my kind of like wheelhouse of things.
Absolutely your wheelhouse, yeah.
It's really funny, like really off-kilter funny. It's not for everyone, but I kind of recommend it.
Okay.
It's really silly, but it's fun.
Would you like to do a film that's kind of all those kind of costumes, that kind of plastic?
I'd like to make any fucking film. If anyone gave me the money, I'd make anything.
Well, yes.
I'd get you to write it and Paul in it, and then I'm done. Job done.
That's all you want in the world.
You can't afford me.
You mind me?
How much do you cost, Paul?
12D. I don't know.
12D.
What's the going rate these days? I'm busy. Leave me alone. That's my answer.
I haven't told you what day we're filming yet, so how do you know you're busy? Jesus.
I mean, an 18-month-old lives in my house. And
you should get him to pay rent, and then I can pay you.
Believe me, I've tried. She doesn't want to hear it.
Get a job.
How is your child 18 months old?
It's ridiculous, isn't it?
The time gone.
I thought you were going to say 18 years old, and I was like, whoa. This lockdown has been...
Flight of the Navigator shit happening. Yeah, she's doing great. She's doing all the things she should be doing, apart from paying rent. But yeah.
Well, that's fine. She's on her fine way for being a communist.
We're raising her as an Antifa super soldier. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
You're getting all that money from George Soros, aren't you? Like,
yeah, I can't stop him. I was like, mate, come on, This is too much now. This is too much, George. But they just keep on coming.
You remind me, Ollie. Have you seen Brigsby Bear? Brigsby Bear.
Which one? I've heard of it. I haven't seen that one yet, though.
I think Phil Lord and Miller produced it, or is it Kiva Schaffer?
Is it got what's his name in it?
It's Kyle Mooney, Claire Danes, Mark Hamill, Greg.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking. Yeah, I do need to watch that. And there's a new Nick Cage film called, is it Weekend at Willy's or something, like Willy's Wicked? Willy's Wonderland.
It's an absolute rip-off of that computer game that annoyed me.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
Five Nights at Freddy's, yeah.
Yeah, well,
he's an absolute rip-off of it. But
he's like attacked by the ghosts of like Muppets, essentially, I think.
Yeah, animatronic creatures. It's like, he goes to like an arcade, and all the animatronics in it are all haunted, and he has to spend one night there or something.
Have you seen the trailer? Like, his beard is the most Just for Men beard and hair I've ever seen. I mean, obviously it's not even his hair, it's a wig, but like, but that beard is so Just for Men.
I think it looks a lot of fun. I'm absolutely up for watching it. I love Nick Cage just going off on it. It's that kind of script is perfect for Nick Cage. You know, it's just what he should be doing.
Yeah, so, give me one crazy Nick Cage film per year, and I'm happy.
Yeah.
You know, you got Mandy last year. You got Colour from Outer Space this year. Willy's Wonderland.
He's working with that insane Japanese director whose name I won't pull, but that's going to be his next film next year as well. So I think Nick Cage is doing wonderful work. I get annoyed when people get like really
people
critical
shit
of
on
him.
Like,
Nick and they get really like, "Oh God, you must have a lot of bills," and it's like, dude's making films. Like he's making great stuff.
Like, to be honest, his trajectory hasn't changed. Like, one of his first films was like, was it Vampire's Kiss or whatever?
Sure.
That film's batshit crazy. Yeah. And then, he was channeling Woody Woodpecker for Raising Arizona and stuff like that. So, he's always been this way.
And, like, even the film we watched that is insane, like...
Wild at Heart?
Like, he's Wild at Heart, yeah. Like, he's always been doing these type of films. And now and again he puts in, he puts in Oscar-winning performances in other things. It's
or he does his, like, National Treasure.
Yeah, he does, like, that's his money films, National Treasure. The B movies he doesn't make a lot of money on them. And sure, I don't know, he did, 18 films in 2019 or something. Like, sure. But, like, one of them is good, and the rest of them are just, meh. It doesn't matter. Like, it just...
Was that film you're on about called Prisoners of the Ghostland or something?
I don't know.
Apparently, so... where is it?
I think it is called Prisoner of the Ghostland. Yeah,
a notorious criminal is sent to rescue a governor's daughter who has disappeared into a dark supernatural universe. To escape the nightmare world, the hero must break the evil curse controlling the mysterious Ghostland.
Sounds good. Sounds like a movie. That's what movies are, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's a
movie. If you didn't know,
Sion Sono
is made up of 24 consecutive pictures.
Is it?
Yeah. I learned that from Charlie Kaufman, and
it's just a series of pictures strung together to give the illusion of movement.
Dude, you know what? The Nick Cage thing is like, if you're gonna be really brilliant, you got to take a risk,
Yeah.
And we talked about Tom Hanks already. Like, I think Tom Hanks is great, but he's like, has Tom Hanks ever really like taken a risk?
Oh yeah, Cloud Atlas. He took all the risks on that one.
But then even that, like a guy who is like just such a dependable everyman type, like Tom Hanks like rarely misses with the projects that he picks. And he tends to fit into a similar box. Nick Cage is like, I'm just going to do something weird, and maybe people will make fun of me, but at least I'm trying. And I respect that. I respect that, because if you really want to do something amazing, then there's always an element of risk, and not everything can work.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just get tired of all the elitism that fans bring to stuff. I just get tired of hearing it, and I think it just plays out with when people talk about Nick Cage. It's like, oh, stop being so fucking stuck up your ass. Like, I'm someone who talks about fucking Rififi, and I'm still not that like too bothered about like, oh God, Nick Cage did a B movie. Wow, like it's fine. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm rambling.
Yeah, it's funny, even like the fact that there is snobbery around what is like, possibly the most kind of mainstream, lowest common denominator art form in the world.
Yeah.
You know, it's...
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, there's obviously levels within that, but I just think, like, there's also, because there's levels and because it's so big, there's also space, and not everything has to be trying to do the same thing. And I think something that took a lot of my life to kind of think about is, like, it's fine that some stuff is there, like, just to be mass market, you know, to employ a bunch of people and make some money. And it's like, yeah, like, where the money ends up isn't what I would ideally go for.
Yeah, sure.
But also it's like, not everything, you know, and like, totally going against my point about Nick Cage, it's like, not everything has to be revolutionary. Like, not everything has to be shooting for the moon. Like, sometimes just doing something of good quality for people to enjoy, you know, is, if that's the best thing you can do sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, films for so many years, and I don't think most people appreciate it. For so many years, films are just a thing to get you into the place to spend money. End of the day.
Yeah, to go on a date, or just something to kind of do.
Yeah, and because, you know, these buildings that we used to watch films in need people to come in and spend money in them. I mean, like, and that's all been marketed around that way. We advertise on it, whatever. They're just a huge money making system, and I just chill out. Just like enjoy them.
It's interesting though. I'm gonna play my usual move and, like, link this to game industry experience, because that's what I actually know about. But there's obviously, like, you talking about going to a place to do a thing, and then that's kind of how they make money. If you think about video game arcades, the decline of video game arcades in the West is, like, I think, an interesting mirror for what, from my perspective, I see as a decline in cinema attendance. You know, obviously, like, pandemic notwithstanding and everything, but the sort of trend that we've seen, especially, you know, as DVD players got, you know, became more affordable. DVDs are basically cheap as hell. Streaming, massive TVs, like, all these things, like, going to the cinema just feels like a lower and lower value proposition. Meanwhile, the prices just go up and up.
Yep.
So, yeah, I mean, I think there's, like, interesting parallels there. But it's also interesting that, like, so much of video game design as we know it now is based on things that were put into place, like, because of the arcade game system. You know, it's like, it's not a secret that those arcade games, the point is to get you to put money, to get you to keep putting money in it in, like, a habitual way. And obviously, a lot of the game design came out of that, and then those game design principles were just carried forward into home entertainment systems, regardless.
Yeah, without thinking about it, like the whole level systems or stuff like that, or just you know, life system and stuff like that. And
then now it's kind of, we got to the point where full circle isn't the right phrase, because it's very different. But at the same time, now we're operating in this sphere where mobile gaming, where the game is free. It's free to walk into the arcade, but if you want to have a good time, you got to put a quarter in the slot, you know? Sure. And then the whole game is built around getting you to put another quarter in the slot. And, you know, you do that a few times, then you go to a different machine and do it a few times. And that's, like, essentially the same thing, but it just exists in this, like, digital space. And I wonder, as I said, like, because of those parallels between, you know, the cinema and the arcade, like, what are those fundamentals of cinema filmmaking that don't translate? Like, I know I've seen the kind of meme of, like, watching Tenet in the way Chris Nolan intended or something, where people are watching it on, like, screens on toilet seats and stuff. Have you seen that?
Sure.
Because like, you know, because he made a comment, because obviously it was released in cinemas during the pandemic, and I think he made some kind of comment of, like, it's how it's, like, meant to be seen or something, and that's why I decided to. And obviously he made that decision. And where I was going with that is, it's also interesting now you have this idea from an extremely prominent filmmaker who's saying, no, that you should see this movie in a cinema. And I know that's a thought that's been echoed, like, by other people as well, but obviously it was, in the case of the pandemic, it was just this level of absurdity.
Exactly.
Of, like, going into this building, sitting with a bunch of other people in the dark, like, just for the sake of watching a film on a big screen.
Yeah.
But like, will now, like, because so many more people watch films at home, like streaming services like Netflix are probably like, I imagine they're putting out more movies at this point by far, like just direct into people's homes than into cinema.
Yeah.
And it's not like the dirty word like direct to DVD thing anymore. It's like, oh, it's a Netflix movie. Like, I don't think there's much of a stigma around that.
Well, even in the last year, there was, I would say, it has changed so damn quickly. Even like last year, you were talking about, do you think a Netflix film will ever win like the Oscar? Look, I can't remember the film title. It's up for Best Picture, but it will never win it because, you know, Netflix is not a real studio and it doesn't have proper cinema releases. And this year, it's going to be something like that, and the next year it probably will be. It's gone so quickly to the point where we're just used to the fact that this is how it gets delivered. And we were talking about this for years. Like, how does streaming start taking over? Like, what do they do? And I think it's pretty much here to stay now that the model's found itself. I mean, early on in the pandemic, you had basically these premium releases. Like, Milan cost like $30 or something.
God, that was ridiculous, wasn't it? Like, from my perspective,
that was the
maybe
early
I'm wrong.
part.
I don't know.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. It's insane. And that was the early part of the pandemic, and now Wonder Woman just gets released on HBO, you know, and that's, no one thought that it made it a worse film or made it look bad. You know, the reviews weren't great for it, but its release schedule wasn't what people thought made it bad. It's just people would expect it to be released like that now.
Yeah, it's interesting for me, like just from my perspective, it's like the delivery mechanism is whatever, like it's inevitable, you know, like it's just what happens. Like it's the easiest and most convenient way for people to consume the media, so it's almost definitely going to become the dominant platform if it's not already. What's interesting to me is like when you said people were talking about, oh, Netflix films aren't really real movies, I kind of went, well, they've got a point. Because so much of what Netflix does is very nakedly AI driven in order to maximize acquisition. And I think I made a similar point the last time I was on this, so I won't go into that.
Well, we talked about it before, that with their series stuff, they tend to cancel things after 2 series because it's about getting the initial subscription. It's not about producing the whole series, and it's not about how much viewing figures there are. It's about that subscription. It's just nakedly about that subscription to get people to re-up it or to not cancel it. And to constantly be telling you that something else is coming again that you need to keep your subscription active for.
When we finish talking about this point, remind me to talk about the series that doesn't follow that trend, because I wanted to talk about it. Okay. But so this kind of algorithmically driven approach, I think, is also apparent in their film catalog as well, which kind of makes you think like, well, okay, they're making these movies, but it's extremely nakedly like marketing driven. And then you kind of go, wait a minute. Is that not exactly what the major studios have been doing for a long time?
It's what the major studios have been trying to do. So that's why you've always had, like, you know, test screenings or those showings where they get the audience to review them afterwards. You know, did you like this? What bit did you not like? Not real test screenings. That's where you always get like aggregators and things like that, and they watch those. They've been desperate to get actual figures for years, and like I tell you, the thing that's made the pandemic has made the movie studios really happy about is the fact that the box office isn't a thing anymore. So like for years we've been obsessed with what the box office says and what the box office has hit, and now it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist at all. And box office through streaming is not the same in the slightest. Like Netflix's ridiculous statements, like this has been watched by 17 billion people or something, is complete bullshit. It's not true. It's like I don't know how they work it out, but there'll be someone will find out at some point. It's every time you fucking, I don't know, you highlight it or something like that, it's recording it as a view or something dumb. Yeah. Like, and
I mean, I think box office was.
So what the studios are really happy about, the fact is, we're not now so obsessed with how much money they're making, so they can hide all this fucking money now. They don't, they don't know that Tenet made 100 billion or whatever. It can make as much money as they say it made. So, like, in terms of creative marketing and funneling money different ways, the studios are going to be so happy about that, in the fact that they're not so like open to absolute like transparency, because the box office used to be so.
Yeah, but no, they've always managed to, like, because always actors and like stars always got back end, but they'd always managed to wrangle it. So, like for example, Ghostbusters, when that was like a massive success. Like in today's like world, that's like $1 billion film.
Sure.
And they managed to work it out that they made no money on it. Do you know what I mean? So they didn't have to pay any back end deals or anything like that, and
sure.
which is a load of bollocks.
Yeah,
but just they've always managed to wrangle it in their favour.
Yeah, I guess I think it's become incredibly easy for them now, and they won't be pushing to get this box office model back in. Like they'll be looking to stick it the way it is.
Yeah, I mean, it was getting kind of ridiculous anyway, wasn't it? Because it's really like with those box office numbers, it's like you're either on top or you're not. You know, it's like if you have a massive smash hit, then obviously you're happy to share that number, even like obfuscated by the fact that actually it's only slightly over the budget, like the marketing budget for the movie. Like it's got nothing to do with like actual profitability. It's just
the budget we
number.
Actually announced, not the budget we actually spent.
Well. Yeah, I mean, in marketing terms, it's like, you know, because I'm an awful marketing person, it's something I say to clients quite a lot. It's like nothing draws a crowd like a crowd. You know, it's like studies show that people will literally just join a queue for no reason, just because there's a queue, so there must be something good at the end of it. Like, it's just kind of how human psychology works. And I think, yes, a lot of people will be happy that number isn't one that is commonly used anymore. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe Marvel Studios would be upset about it, but other than them, Disney, I guess, would be annoyed. But other than them.
I mean, Disney are full into this subscription model now, and their newest, they're doing their big release next month or whatever it is, next few weeks on Disney Plus. Like they're announcing absolutely everywhere. They're doing the biggest drop of digital movies.
Oh, like films ever.
Like yeah, so it's basically all the Fox catalog. But like
yeah, but like a new Star Wars or like a new like Marvel movie they'd probably still do like a traditional release. Like
I think
pandemic aside, they would have still done that, I expect.
I expect they still will, because they have hidden like the films that they would have come out, like Scarlet whatever.
No, it's Black Widow.
Black Widow, yeah.
Scarlet
Widow.
Scarlet Widow.
Close.
So I think they're trying to save it for traditional releases, but I think the digital release won't be far off it. I think they'll aim for the opening weekend stuff, because I think the opening weekend will still be a big thing. And they used to drop off cinemas in 2 weeks anyway, really, the actual numbers. So I think they'll probably just drop it to streaming quite quickly now.
Yeah, red carpet's probably massive like social engagement for them as well, isn't it? So
yeah, that's true.
Well, it gets in all the press and stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But yeah, talking about the Netflix model, the 2-season model. There's a show that I've been watching that's bucked the trend of that. Like I said, the small human living in my house takes a lot of time, so I don't get much opportunity to watch stuff. But I have watched 3 seasons of a show on Netflix. Can you believe it? The 3rd one dropped recently. This is a show that
I'm trying to think what it is.
I'm not gonna say what it is. I'm gonna describe it and see how long it takes to get it. I'm gonna make you guess. There's 3 seasons of it. It's not good. But it is amazing. And I think like the biggest thing, the reason I really like this show is like they could have phoned it in. They could have totally phoned it in, and it actually like it would have been fine, you know? Like no one had to put any effort into this, and it would have done what it was meant to do. But it just goes so hard in so many different areas, and it actually ends up being amazing. It's a show based on a movie that came out in the 80s.
Cobra Kai?
Yeah. So, the thing with this, have either of you watched it?
Yeah, but I have to say, it's the one time I can be elitist in my in
you watched
world.
It back in the YouTube days.
I did. I watched it when it was a YouTube Red
of course,
program.
Yeah. I forgot about that.
Which, you know, everyone's favourite streaming platform, YouTube Red, that we all talk about daily and we can never get enough of.
Dude, you say that. I watch YouTube on a daily basis. I watch more YouTube than anything.
But I can't believe that like YouTube is the most watched thing in the world and they couldn't get a bloody fucking streaming model. actually working through it.
Yeah, because YouTube's free.
So,
how are you going to get someone to pay for something that's free? That doesn't make any sense.
Convince them to pay for it. Yeah,
it's like, hey, you like watching YouTube? Yeah. Do you want to pay for it? No. Like, what?
And because YouTube is seen as a total internet thing as well, when people are like, come on, watch this Cobra Kai, it's brilliant, it's actually really worth paying YouTube Red for, people just downloaded it because it's on the internet. Like,
yeah. Like, so YouTube's an internet utility. Like, it's not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's not a company. It's not like HBO or Netflix or whatever. But yeah, so yeah, it's like it's not good. Like the level it is, it's like one of the better teen drama kind of shows.
Yeah.
But what I think is,
60-year-old man as your lead.
That's why it's amazing, because the show doesn't shy away from the fact that it is ridiculous that these two middle-aged men's entire lives have pivoted around a local under-18s karate tournament that they were both in when they were teenagers.
Well, I don't know about you, Paul,
doesn't shy away from the actual Cobra Kai thing as well. Like,
Paul. I did Taekwondo as a kid at Good Hope Social Club with Liam, and I took part in a tournament, and I got bronze, but I was beaten by one kid who kicked me so hard in the chest that I was winded, and I had to forfeit one of the matches. And to this day, I hold a vendetta and a grudge against this said individual. He's my mortal enemy. Can't remember his name.
See, so then you should be watching Cobra Kai because you can relate.
I should.
You know?
No, it's too close to the bone, to be honest.
Yeah.
It is very.
But I think it's like, it's such a fine line to walk to acknowledge the ridiculousness of your own premise while actually still maintaining the seriousness in the moment, and also acknowledging like how much of a toxic effect this obsession has had to these men, to their whole lives. And it's actually one of my sorry, Liam, yeah.
I was going to say my favourite character in the show is Daniel's wife, who is that she's just like, why are you so, just stop it.
Yeah.
Be an adult.
Is he not married to Elizabeth Shue?
No, they broke up at the end of Karate Kid 1. Come on, now.
Did they?
They're not together in Karate Kid 2. He tells that silly story about how they broke up in Karate Kid 2.
I can't remember. I only remember, which is the one where they're planting bonsai trees and they have to like...
3.
He's like on a pulley system or whatever. Is that 3?
Yeah.
Call yourself a movie fan. Look at you. And I think actually one of my biggest criticisms of the show is that sometimes the show forgets that actually Daniel is awful and ridiculous.
Yes.
and I think that like that's why his wife as a character is so good, because she's the only real person on the show.
She is the only human in the show, yeah. She is.
And but like I don't think it ever goes far enough with, because my favorite thing to do during season 3 is occasionally yelling, "Where's your son, Daniel?"
I forgot he had a son.
Exactly.
I legitimately forgot.
He has 2 children.
He has 2 children.
And he's he's spending all his time fighting for the soul of someone else's kid. It's ridiculous.
There was a line in the season 3 when the teachers are yelling about the incident in the school, and they're like, "We can't be held hostages by these local karate gangs." And I'm just like, the writers are loving this. The writers are having so much fun just feeding into this and leaning into it.
Yeah. It's like I just think it is like, it's just interesting how they don't shy away from the fact that not only is it ridiculous, but it's also incredibly toxic to their lives, and also they're very like, it's kind of weird. Like I feel like the writers' room is just constant arguments, because sometimes they make like really clever points about like toxic masculinity, and they make like, you know, like clever points about like the older generation's view of younger people versus what younger people are actually like. And then sometimes like there's these like lines where you just think like, who let the old man in the writing room? Like, it's strange, and it's like, it's very kind of, it's a little bit unbalanced in its kind of worldview sometimes, but I think it's like, it's way cleverer than it needed to be. Like it's again, it's not like
race and the toxic kind of like blind patriotism to veterans as well.
Yeah,
like they think about these things about the characters, which is weird. It's I'm with you. I didn't think they would think about this as much.
Yeah. So it is a show. Like I said, it's hard to say that it's good.
Yeah,
but it's enjoyable, and it's watchable. Amazing, and it's so unique. Like there's so few things that you could do this with, I think, and really make it work. And I'm sure we'll find out, because they're gonna try and do it with other things,
haven't they? Yeah.
Because they're trying to do it with like Saved by the Bell, and I think there's another film they're kind of trying to make into like a.
People are enjoying the Saved by the Bell new series.
Yeah,
I've got no interest in watching it, but people
rest in peace, Dustin Diamond. I guess we should probably say
true.
That.
I think I was going to say about Cobra Kai, which I think is really unique as well, which never happens on these reboot stuff, is that literally every actor is back. Literally every actor is back.
It's not like they were doing much. Even Pat Morita, is he back?
No, but that's
from the grave?
That's the important thing, though. They were acting, because if they weren't doing anything, they wouldn't be on the show. But they all have continued being working actors, so they're able to
like
come
in
back
bit
on
parts
and
and stuff like that.
Yeah. So like his girlfriend in the second one, the Japanese girl, she came onto the show and I was like, I know that actress. What's she been acting in? And looked it up, and she was in Picard. She was like Commander O in Picard that I just watched the year before.
No way.
So it's incredible.
Anytime I look at actors like that, they always end up they're in SVU or like one of those kind of shows, or like LA, the Law and Order or something like that.
Yeah, sure. But I just found it quite remarkable that literally anyone who's ever in that show apparently kept on working, including the trilogy, because they were obsessed with the events that's happened in these 3 films that you don't ever remember until the show, and the show knows you don't remember them because they show you flashbacks constantly to remind you. But I love how they're just so tied to it. I've never seen a series that's so tied to a law that no one knew. They didn't need to. They didn't need to do that at all. No one was begging for it. So it's a fascinating watch. I really do recommend it.
Yeah, it's hard to say that it's good, but it's very easy to recommend, and it's definitely it's definitely very enjoyable. And it's not. And I think you're right that it is incredibly tied to the established law, but it's not it doesn't hold it sacred either.
Right.
I think one of the really interesting things about the show is obviously because Daniel is not the only protagonist now. Johnny is also a protagonist.
Yeah.
So it's very important that actually they kind of reposition a few things slightly to make Johnny much more sympathetic. Even though obviously he's an asshole, but is a sympathetic asshole. And also I feel like they kind of show things from his side in a way that actually a kind of post hoc way, justify his actions during the first film, but also, it doesn't feel like force, or it doesn't feel like they're kind of, going back on what happened, but it is interesting. And I just think I forget his name, but the guy who plays Johnny is
I forget his name.
Man, he some of this stuff that just shouldn't work at all. He absolutely nails it, and he can
William
go
Zabka. William Zabka.
It, yeah, Zabka.
I believe you, but sometimes he just sometimes it goes so close to the edge of being just too over the top, too ridiculous, too unbelievable, and then they always manage to pull it back. And whatever he's doing, whether he's being a clown or beating up guys in a bar or having a stupid petty argument with his childhood rival or any of these things, he's always believable in the moment.
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
And I think because there's another character in the show who I think they totally fail at this with. But the thing with Johnny is whatever he has to be, he just in the moment, he totally nails it, and his kind of his inconsistency as a character is kind of part of his character. He's his own worst enemy and all this kind of stuff. So it makes sense that he flip-flops like that. Yeah. And you end up really rooting for him because you want him to make the good choice.
Yeah, just make the good choice. Yeah, totally.
Or you just want the thing to work out for him because he just like wants it so much and it'd be nice, but then of course it falls apart in his hands because he doesn't know how to interact with people really. Yeah, anyway, that's me chatting about Cobra Kai. So yeah, all that talk of elitism earlier, you can forget about that.
My one remaining question.
Now let's talk about 1950s French cinema.
Anyway, today's film is from 1955 and it's Jules Dassin's Rififi.
Journée, il se les roule. Il a beaucoup de philosophie, mais il aime trop la rififi. À peine un autre gamme fait du gringue, qu'il pose la main sur son flingue. Redresse son galure et vas-y pour un petit coup de rififi. Je voudrais m'en mêler, mais du doigt. Il me montre la porte et me dit tire-toi. Et quand il revient sans rien dire, avec son méchant petit sourire, à mon tour ça ne fait pas un pli. Je suis bonne pour la rififi.
Putain, ne fais pas ça.
Aïe.
Well, okay, I've got a question for you. I've been asking this to our guests, and I think I know the answer. I think you may have even said, have you got any experience with 50s films, or what do you think when someone says to you, like, let's watch this 50s film or stuff like that? What was your immediate reaction? Is it like, oh shit, someone's giving me...
That's a daily occurrence for Paul.
Or is it like someone's giving me... Is it
Let's
like
watch a
homework?
50s
Do you
film.
get that kind of feeling about it, that it's like this is going to be an effort, or is this going to be like fun to watch or something? Because I think most people think if you're watching something so old, it feels a bit like heavy lifting. Like you're going to have to kind of struggle with this a little bit.
I mean, I think I'm maybe I'm atypical in the way that like I saw it as like a fun opportunity to do something that I wouldn't normally do.
Okay, cool.
And I think that like maybe if you go back far enough where the cinematic language is just so divorced from what we have now, like maybe that would be like a little bit more of a struggle. But I was pleasantly surprised with this film. I expected it to be good, or else why would you ask me to watch it? You know, like, so I was kind of going okay, this is going to be decent. I know the general like premise and like that sounds pretty cool. And I was actually very interested, especially in the first half of the movie, thinking about, again, like cinematic language, the kind of things that still are used, the kind of tropes that are still used in cinema, the things that aren't used, even things like I found like the editing and shot construction really interesting sometimes.
Absolutely.
How like just occasionally there was a moment where it was just like, well, I see why they did that, but that would never happen like now.
Yeah.
And other things, like I don't know how far we want to go into. Like I guess in answer to the question, like I was excited about you know, having the opportunity to like experience something that I wouldn't have normally picked to watch.
Oh, that's fun.
So that's my view of it.
I think it was. I mean, it feels slightly daunting from my point of view to go up to someone and said, like, please, can you come on our podcast and watch this French film? It's about 2 hours. It's in black and white and it's from the 50s.
Well, no,
but
like the other friends of ours that we've approached, they're like, oh, I don't really know much about 50s films. I'm like, that's the fucking point. That's the point.
Nor do we.
Like, we don't either.
Like, we're learning. Like, and I think the benefit of Rififi versus French noir at this period is everywhere. Like, we're just going into the new wave cinema. Like, me and Brandon did a little episode on it a couple of weeks ago. Like, we could have picked any of those, but I think what's really good about Rififi is it's not a French film, it's an American film. It has American sensibilities. French people at the time looked at Rififi and saw it as a Hollywood film. It was full of these Hollywood flashes and Hollywood stuff. And American people looked at it to see it as like a suave French like art piece. Like, so it's a film that's always sat firmly in the middle of the Atlantic, of like kind of on both sides, and no one really, everyone thinking it's good because it's of the thing that gets brought to it. And again with Rififi, and I think we did cover another film that's like this as well, that the archetypes in this and the tropes in this are so genre setting that if you've seen any heist movie, it came from this. Like, I think sometimes when you go back to watch those archetypal films, you feel like you know it all. Kind of like, you know what the trope's going to be, you know what's going to be set up, and you know the twists and turns and stuff. And I think what I loved about this is it still worked for me. Like, it still kind of built that tension. It was still really fun to watch, and it was still like, you know, sexy and kind of cool. And, you know, the main scene when we get to it is so engrossing, I think, like, and it's shot so well, and it's shot so lovingly, I think, that it just ties the whole thing together for me.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that, like, as a kind of, I guess, foundational text for a genre, it just like, just the thought of like people sitting around and just like inventing this stuff, just coming up with it. And it's like, and it is interesting that it still plays perfectly well today, I think. Like, it still plays exactly as it should. Because it just means that like all of these choices that they made, they just like absolutely nailed, and like no one's really come up with a better idea in a lot of cases since then, which is just incredible. Like, for that amount of time.
I mean, this film, we I don't know if we've actually mentioned we're talking about.
I was going to go into it.
We keep like beating around the bush, but like, you know, this film was quite notorious. It was banned in countries or places or cut heavily because they thought of it as like an instructional kind of film, like how to rob a bank, how to rob a jewelry store. It's like
there were people that claimed they learned
a perfectly
how to do it,
reasonable plan.
Yeah, and the people that did use the plans in this to rob places, it was people watching it going, oh, that makes sense, we can do this, like, kind of thing. Like, it did happen. I think the actual truth of that is absolutely overblown, but at least that is on reports that people got this idea from it.
Yeah, I imagine there's like a film. There was a film company exec somewhere who was spinning a lot of those stories. I wouldn't be surprised. But I will say, I work with a French woman. She's very cultured. She's very well read. I told her that I watched this movie, and she was extremely unimpressed. She offered to give me a list of French noir movies. Was like her first reaction. So yeah, it's interesting.
I told you
should say that, and you totally like you can absolutely feel the Hollywood influence all the way through this.
Yeah,
but then maybe that works both ways as well. Like, maybe this was a movie that, like,
I think it
just
is
set up so much of those expectations.
It is. It absolutely is why this film worked. It's why this film was so popular. It's why this film broke barriers. It's because it is this mix of French and Hollywood filmmaking. It is because.
Well, I mean, you don't even see any French landmarks until the very last scene of the film. It's like when they go past the what is it? You know, I've forgotten what the name of
the French thing.
Describe it.
Yeah, the French thing. So the end of that big road. What's it called?
Champs-Élysées.
Yeah, that's the one.
That big road. The Arc de Triomphe.
Yeah, I've been there. That goes back to my New York stories.
This is another Ollie's vacation films.
Obviously,
I did. I've also been there, and I've also been to the road in Bucharest in Romania that was specifically built to be 1 meter wider than the Champs-Élysées.
Well, you have another French connection, don't you? Aren't you descended from French royalty?
Kind of, yeah. But I mean, not in not in a way that means I have horses or anything. But yeah, like my family history is French. It's where my surname comes from.
Well, that's why we got you onto the
Nadin.
show. I thought, get Paul on. He can tell us all about French things. He's very French.
Well, this was the thing, actually. I was I was like, they've asked me to watch this film. It's like, why do they want me to watch this? Like, I don't really know anything about like heist. I guess I like gangster movies a bit, I guess. And then Kate said to me, the director was blacklisted for being a communist sympathizer.
Yep, that's why I asked you. That's absolutely why I asked you. This film is full of that, and that's why I wanted you to watch it. I was going to go into it.
It's full of it, but he claims it's not.
Yeah, but he doesn't think...
There's only one sequence he claims it is.
I mean, he, as you say, Mr. Jules Dassin was blacklisted by the American House of Unamerican Activities, or whatever. The House
for being
of
French.
For being a big commie. Mainly because he made a film called
apparently
Nazi
though
something.
He wasn't part of the party though.
None of them were. It's all like none of them were members of the party. None of them were communists. They had a problem with socialists in Hollywood, and they saw anyone who was a socialist as being un-American. Same thing we spoke about with the Lavender Scare when I did the film with Natalie. They saw like homosexuality as being anti-American, so communist, and that means you have to kick them out of the country. Like, it was this idea of anything that didn't suit American ideals was communist. And he basically made a film that was Antifa film, anti-fascism film called Nazi Hunters, I think it was called, or something like that. It's called and because of that flagged him up as a big person for being a communist, because he made a film against Nazis. That's
well, the Nazis hated communists.
They did,
the first target.
So
I think it's a mistake
agents,
that maybe is
Nazi agent.
Yeah.
Sure. I think it's a mistake that people are much more likely to make now than back then, but it seems to be a kind of popular myth now that like fascism and Nazism was this thing that happened, like a small group of people in one country in Europe went mad for a few years, and then the evil was defeated, and it's... And we kind of ignore the fact that like most of the fascists were still just wandering around. And, a lot of them were the upper classes, and, a lot of them were people who make these decisions in government and stuff. And, it's,
and
but it's very easy to be like, oh, well, the people with the black uniforms are gone, so it's probably fine now.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he did join the Communist Party in the 30s, but left.
He joined the Communist Party in the same way I did in university. It's but it doesn't matter, like, really, if he was a communist or not. What matters is the fact that he basically Elia Kazan, who was bring up on the show before, the director, who was husband of Barbara Loden, and he was basically a huge snitch for the House of Un-American Activities. And he would basically just drop names, basically into like
you ratted him out.
And he would just say this person's a communist, and they'd speak to him and go, oh look, Dassin actually joined the party for a year in 1939, so look at him, and he made this film that hates Nazis, so he must be a communist. And they kicked him out of the country. So at this point, he was making B movies for MGM. That's really what he did in America. They kicked him out of the country, and for more than 5 years, he was making like Italian and French, just kind of low budget films, low budget dramas and low budget horror films. For 5 years, he hadn't made a single thing. Like, he was struggling. He had no work coming in. He was not allowed to work in Hollywood.
Well, because actors were told that if he worked for him, they'd be blacklisted
as well. Yeah, because it just went.
I think, wasn't Jacques Abor one or something?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And so eventually this script landed on his desk, really. He hated the script. He hated, like, as many...
Well, no, it was the book. He was given the book, and he couldn't actually read the book, 'cause it's all in French, but it's like a very particular Parisian kind of dialect that other people outside of Paris couldn't really understand. So we had to get this film producer to kind of read it to him. And apparently in this book, it's kind of got necrophilia in it. It's got all kinds of weird shit in it. And apparently the villains in it, the mobsters, were like Arabs and black people from like Africa. And he was like, well, I don't really want to make this film. But then apparently when he had the meeting, he said yes anyway, because he was obviously desperate
he hadn't
for
worked
work.
for 5 years,
and then so he said, but I want to change the villains, and they were like, oh yes, you can make them American because you obviously hate Americans because of what they've done to you. And he was like, well, have you ever thought about making them French? And they were like, oh no, okay, then let's do that then. But then apparently the writer of the book pulled a gun out on him because he changed his book that much. He pulled a gun out on him, and he just Dassin just laughed at him.
And we didn't say Dassin is in the film. He plays the safecracker.
He's my favourite character.
Brilliant.
He wears ballet shoes.
Yeah. And the real big thing about that brings up his whole thing is the big kind of villain of the film. Really, is the kind of idea of snitching on each other and the idea of kind of like losing your like treason basically inside the group. So his kind of monologue when he dies, skipping forward, that monologue is about him talking about Hollywood. Really, like that's not in the book. That's him doing it on the screen. And the other thing he brought to the film that's not in the book at all is actually the safe cracking scene. That's not in the book like that. They don't describe it for 30 minutes, like in every single bit. That's something he decided to put into it to really raise attention. And to show these people as experts, to show that's the thing he brought to the heist movie, that these people are skilled gentleman thieves, almost to be respected, because they're talented. It's a skilled profession. It's something you can't just get anyone to do on the street. They're doing it with finesse, and it's kind of sexy and kind of clever and stuff. That wasn't something we really saw before, and it's something in every heist movie since, basically.
I kind of like as well, they're not all French. They're like one's Swedish,
one's
Italian, one's I don't know.
Yeah,
but yeah, they're from all over the place. So they kind of got that kind of like even like in Ocean's 11, you've kind of got people from other parts of the world and stuff, kind of bringing their talents.
It feels like
I guess it's a good shorthand, isn't it, for like how I guess how high up in their profession they are, that you have to go kind of far afield to find these people who are talented enough and experienced enough to take on the job.
I also think,
but everyone knows just the perfect guy, don't they?
Exactly. Yeah.
I also think
because they move in those circles. That's why you couldn't find a guy in Sweden to do. I can't remember what it is.
I could, trust me. I can get you a guy.
It's also a product of watching 50s movies as well, because if this film was made earlier, I don't think they would have been international. But the big thing in the 50s coming out of World War II is obviously the creation of what becomes the EU. So you have like the Treaty of Rome, Treaty of Versailles in the 50s, I think 52 and 58 or whatever it is. And it's the same thing as like the French film that me and Brandon watched, Elevated to the Gallows. There is a undercurrent, because it's made in this time period, of Europe coming together and people coming from different places, because the idea of being able to move between countries and work with people in other places is now a thing, when it just literally wasn't, in the same way.
Wow, that sounds great.
Doesn't it sound brilliant? Like
we should do that. We should do that now.
And I think that that's what I got. I think a lot of these films that I'm watching in this time period do have that kind of push of Europe as an idea, and push of Europe as there's many people working together is a thing that runs through a lot of these films, really. Even though they're mobsters or whatever, but it's still like, people are still making these films and making decisions about them in the back. So
I found it interesting, actually. Maybe it might be the case that it was too close after the fact to be comfortable, but I actually found the lack of any kind of noticeable reference to World War II to be interesting, especially like considering the ages of the guys
they all would have been in
the movie. Yeah, or maybe even like World War One for Tony, the Stefan.
It's not Tony, it's Tony.
Yeah,
Tony.
Yeah, okay. But for that guy, like, so yeah, I found it interesting that there didn't really seem to be any kind of spectre of that, like even in the kind of short sort of gunplay scenes or like being stalked with a gun or anything. There didn't seem to be any of that, but maybe that wasn't something people really wanted to focus on too much at that time.
Yeah,
or
I think that
maybe it was the American influence because they were less touched by the movie. True. But you think like in the middle of France,
I think I haven't seen it yet. This might be my naivete of like French films. I've said in the other episode, I'm not a great like knowledge of French films, but I see a lot of lack of like tackling like Vichy France in French media, like, and they were occupied, they were a fascist government for a number of years, like that. There were people working in France who were were fascists, who were you can call them traitors.
It's all right. Hello covered all that, so we don't need it.
But I think it is weird how.
Well, I guess that's not really
is it more of a plot element in a lot of the stuff they're making, which I just thought it would be fertile ground, basically.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I guess like the French probably don't have as much opportunity to cast themselves as heroes of World War II. Like, other than there's obviously the French Resistance who were amazing, and did amazing work. But I guess it's like in British war movies, like you don't often see the Union of Fascists. You don't often see, you know, Mosley and the black shirts marching. You know, like it's just not something that gets brought up, is it? So I guess it's understandable in popular media that they don't tackle that.
And maybe it's a product of the time we're living in as well, that we're looking back to these films in the 50s and thinking, well, where are the fascists? Because they're around right now. Like, they're still there. And because we're
especially with an Italian in the movie,
exactly.
like an Italian in France. Like, so that's like the fact that that's like no one has an issue with that in any at all. I don't know. It just seems weird. Like, and then you watch Fawlty Towers, and it's like, don't mention the war. It's like, but then I guess that was a bit later. Like, maybe that's not something that would have happened.
But going back to Dassin, like how he didn't want them to be Arabian and black kind of villains. He kind of probably wanted to get rid of any notion of just have it focus solely on the heist of these people. Maybe.
I mean, I guess it's not about them in that such degree, is it? I mean, you have the atmosphere of it all and the kind of the stuff with his girlfriend and stuff like that, like but it is about it's not about their, I don't know what point I'm making. I've lost my point in the middle of my head.
It's weird, and I think maybe it's like partly us as British people, we kind of expect that because there's just that undercurrent constantly in British culture, like everything. You know, we're basically Danny from the Karate Kid, but instead of a under-18s regional karate tournament, it was World War II. Like, we just, you know, we never move past that as a nation, like that idea of ourselves. Whereas maybe like European countries were, you know, wanted to be much more forward thinking.
I like that as a theory. I think I like that as a theory that they're looking forward and not wanting to look back. They're wanting to push past this spectre. Whereas the way that we treated after the post-war years is we wanted to constantly talk about it and constantly bring it up. It needs to be centre stage of everything that we do. Which I like that theory that it would be different on the continent because they actually kind of lived it more than we did.
It's just like still to this day, like, you know, Ramadan was cancelled, but people were having street parties for VE Day. You know, like what's that about?
Yeah.
You know, whatever. But heist movie. Well, that was one thing I did actually think, and maybe this is my inexperience watching 50s movies, but I was actually talking about forward thinking. I was surprised with how modern a lot of it felt. Apart from, everyone looks like they've borrowed their dad's suit for their GCSE drama production, but you know, I feel like
who would you play? Paul, when you were at school, who would you have played
in this movie?
Yeah.
Ooh, man. Well, I mean, probably the Stefan Moir. Let's be honest. Possibly, I think in a school play, I would have been the Stefan Moir. In amateur dramatics production, I would have been the young guy with the son. And in a professional production, I would have been the drug addict guy. And you know I'm right.
I forgot about the drug addict guy. I really like that character.
Well, that was part of it, wasn't it? I mean, in this movie, you've got like, I'm not surprised it was controversial at the time, but you have like, you know, promiscuous sexual relationships. You have women in various states of undress. You have lots of various forms of violence, drug taking. I mean, obviously, it's done in a way where none of it actually happens on the screen.
Yeah,
but
and the violence as well is the same.
What was he, a heroin addict?
Heroin, yeah.
I don't know what it's meant to be. Like, he has a small packet, and then he goes off screen for 2 seconds, and then he's fine.
Don't they call it heroin?
I don't know what he did with it.
I'm sure they actually call it heroin.
Maybe he poured it in his ear. Like, they call it dope, or the subtitles refer to it as dope. So it's probably heroin, I guess, in the 50s. I don't know.
I just looked at my note and it says he introduced him to the friend Mario, an Italian guy in a giant suit.
Yeah. Mario's great, isn't he? Like, man, the guy who played that guy, he really nailed it, I think.
Yeah, Robert Manuel.
Sure.
That's his name. Yeah, sure.
I believe you.
And actually, talking about how controversial it was when it did eventually play America, because obviously they wouldn't accept it. He was, Dassin was blacklisted, and blacklisted meant that you couldn't have your name on films and open films with your name on it in America. So this film's actually really important in that kind of relationship, because it was one of the first films to actually break that blacklist. It opened in America with Jules Dassin's name before it, and I think it played for 20 weeks at a fine arts theatre first, and the production company released it, refused to cut it, and it didn't go through the MPAA. And obviously at the time as well, with the MPAA, the thing that was going on was the code, the kind of motion picture decency code. And one of the big reviewers of the film that came out, one of the big things huge lovers of the film at the time, was like, can you imagine what this film would have been if they allowed the MPAA to get their fingers all over it? Because they would have cut it to shreds, as you say, and they would have cut out so much about it, and so much of even the framing of it. Because one thing that was on that code list was you're not allowed to have villains be portrayed in a good light. So even there was no way this Tony would have survived the MPAA, basically, because he couldn't be the hero of the film. And so, in so many ways, this film is showing you maybe the better films that could have come out in America in the 50s if American filmmakers were allowed to just work instead of being kind of handcuffed by all this kind of paranoia that was going on at the time.
Didn't they have to create like a subsidiary kind of company to put it out on, though?
I feel like that, yeah.
And I think it was like released as an English dub, and it was called Rififi Means Trouble.
Yeah,
yeah,
totally.
Because Rififi doesn't really mean anything. It's kind of what means rough and tumble. Roughly.
Yeah. It's a description for the kind of for gangster characters, isn't it? It's kind of French slang, I think. It doesn't really have a direct translation at all, which obviously the marketers...
I mean, it has a theme song.
It does have a theme song.
Ooh, Rififi.
Is that the scene with the kind of shadows and silhouettes they're dancing?
Yeah, it's great.
Awesome,
that
isn't it?
It's kind of like... It's like the scene that any film like Roger Rabbit or even The Mask has kind of mimicked.
That's true.
Do you know what I mean?
In the club, which, if I remember right, the club's named... I can't remember the name of it. I watched, for the listeners, I watched this film a long time ago. The name of the club is a name of a film by another director, by a French director, and he's honouring him in this film and as an influence to the noir style. But I can't remember.
Yeah, for the listeners, Liam actually watched this movie back in the 50s in that small art house cinema in the US. I think though it does I think in a way it carries that sensibility of the bad guys not getting a happy ending almost. I think thinking about the ending of this movie, it is I feel like up until the 1970s it's what would have happened, and then from the 1980s onwards I think maybe you would have seen a slightly different ending.
In what way?
I think that the character of the dad would have been presented in a slightly more sympathetic way.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that despite being shot, he would have survived along with the son to go back as well.
I like the line his wife says towards the end, where she goes. I can't remember.
When she's saying there's all those millions of kids that grew up poor just like you.
Yeah.
And you turned out like this. It's because...
You're a tough guy.
Yeah.
But you're the weak one or something.
Yeah.
Cool. Is it loads of kids grow up poor? Why did you become a hood, a criminal? That one.
Yeah. It's why?
Yeah.
Why did you...
Basically, she just says you're the weak one because you became a hood and a criminal.
Which is so, brutal because, what does he do? What... okay, he's robbing diamonds or whatever, but who cares? It's not
he actually seemed to love his child, which is a change for a film like that.
Yeah.
He actually seemed to.
Is shown to be a good dad. They seem to live in a nice place.
Yeah.
We don't see him beat his wife up, which we can't say for every character in this movie.
Yeah. Tony,
Don't need.
Yeah, his kind of he didn't. Well, he's like loyal to his friend who like didn't rat him out, and he helps him. He helps his friend with money when he's in a tough spot. He cares about his like health and stuff. When they come up, they come up with a very simple plan to basically like go in through a window and nick a couple of things.
Yeah,
like,
Mario's just like, can we just smash this window and grab some stuff? That's basically his first plan,
is that even bad? Like, I mean, I don't care.
Well, I found that true. Like the real villains of this is like Grutter and that kind of mob. Really, is their actual kind of gangsters, and they're real villains. Robbing like the Parisian version of Tiffany's basically like is fine. Who cares? It's insurance. Who gives a shit? Like it doesn't really matter. You're kind of on their side. Really, it's like fine. They're making themselves rich.
This whole story reminded me. What was that recent jewelry robbing or whatever? Was it the Hatton Garden?
Yeah, the Hatton Garden robbery with the old men.
Yeah. Yeah, very much reminded me of that, to be honest. But
well, maybe they've
probably seen this film.
They probably did back in the 50s.
That's what else does he do? Well, when he goes to the club and there's that other woman who's like chatting to him and stuff, and then he's like perfectly courteous but not overly flirty, and then tells her to go talk to someone her own age and leaves, like there's the implication there that he's also like faithful to his wife. Like, I don't understand why she suddenly like turns on him. And
I think she's just...
It's probably because her son's been taken and he's kind of like, he's holding on to the money.
Yeah.
And pretty much saying like, he keeps deferring the phone. Well, keeps like putting back the phone, like saying like, "Oh, he hasn't come yet. He hasn't come yet. He hasn't come with the money yet. He hasn't come with the money yet." But he has.
The woman's suffering this thing called hysteria, and what it is, it's when the room moves around the body.
I didn't know if she was suffering from like the Padme thing, where she looked like she was dying.
No, the other woman like injected her with something, didn't she?
While smoking a big cigarette.
Yeah. Massive cigarettes in this movie.
Massive gauloises. Hanging gauloises.
But yeah, I think that like, I think if this film was made in modern times, I don't like. If you look at something like Goodfellas, I mean, I guess that's based on a true story. I want to say, or based on a guy's memoir. So of course the guy lives to the end.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, it's like, or even like in something like The Departed, how like Mark Wahlberg's alive at the end, you know what I mean? There's always like, always like one of the characters is kind of like still around to...
I think the heist is based on a real heist that happened in the like late 1800s in Paris, I think. Something like that.
That's
cool. And they were going to remake this, and they were going to get Al Pacino as the lead. As
what, in the 80s?
As No, in the 90s. No, in the 2000s. I think 2005 they bought the rights to the script.
That is a bad idea. That is legitimately a bad idea.
But would they have done the 30 minutes of no dialogue in the middle? Would they have been would they have been brave enough? Would they have been brave enough to do all that time with no talking?
I love it. 33 minutes. There's barely the soundtrack itself goes to a whisper. Like it's just hand movements. It's just them looking at each other. Like the tingle of the piano is like deafening. Every like shove.
My favourite bit, I was like, oh, how are they going to stop the rubble from hitting the floor?
The umbrella. And
then they all pull out the umbrella, and I was like, that's how you do it.
It's so good. I love that thing when they break into those old people's apartments and they just like blindfold them,
chloroform them.
I did laugh out loud because the guy comes out and they like chloroform him and grab him, and then the woman appears and they do exactly the same thing to her.
No, they knock again, don't they?
I did giggle a bit at that. I have to admit, but I also think with that the silent section, they did such a great job of setting up what needed to be set up to justify the actions and to explain the actions, but they didn't go through too much that you were always like totally sure what was going to happen at any given moment.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like you were, and I think that balance was like totally necessary to properly build the tension during that sequence. Because there was enough expectation, but there was also enough uncertainty at the same time. And it's not just a like, will they be able to do it or not? or like, you know, what's going to go wrong. There was also this like added element of like, we don't know what the full plan is. So they do these things and we're like, oh, why are they doing that? Oh, that makes sense. And then, you know, it just gives them opportunities to like maintain your interest like throughout it with just these switching between the different things. I just thought that was really, really, really well done.
I loved watching them solve those problems. That was just really fun to me. Like solving the scene when they're solving the problem with the alarm and they keep trying different things and getting annoyed the alarm keeps going off until they're shaking it. They're trying to do other things and the alarm's not even like fancy. I'm sure it's fancy for the 50s technology, but it's basically like just a bell in a box. Like, but like it's still got enough of a problem for them that they have to kind of solve it, and you know, with the fire extinguisher at the end. And I love that I knew that was a problem, and that would be the main issue that they'd come against. But then when you watch as you say, when you watch the actual kind of heist, there's so many other problems which didn't even occur to me while watching it, because they didn't show me it. I didn't occur that it would be a problem, but these characters have thought about it. They knew that this would be a problem, and it was just so satisfying. And I didn't know if they would get away with it. I mean, I kind of knew, you know, like, but I didn't. Whilst watching it, I didn't really know that they were going to be successful. I didn't know if a cop was going to walk in at the last second. I didn't know if they'd get away with all the money or not, or they would have got caught a little bit.
Well,
or
I
one
knew
of them would
the
die
moment that the moment Dassin grabbed that extra ring from the box, I knew that was going to be the downfall in some way or another. Because he just went that, you know, and I knew that was it.
That's the moment, isn't it? Because it's the deviation from the plan.
From the plan, yeah.
Like that's when you know that's what's gonna mess them up. It was interesting. I mean, it's in a very kind of meta way, like because the heist happens quite early, you sort of know that something's gonna go wrong. You know, you're not just gonna watch them, I don't know, like sitting on a beach for half an hour or whatever. Like that last scene of Trading Places, but just for half an hour, like all of them just sunbathing. But I didn't really know what to expect. Like, I guess, like, I expected the Stéphanoise girlfriend to be a bit more involved, or, you know, like, maybe the other gangster, maybe, I don't know. Maybe that's just with hindsight, but at the time I wasn't sure what to expect. And I actually think the angle with the kidnapping, like, just makes total sense as well for many layered reasons.
I agree, and
like one of the only good things that we see Tony do is his interaction with the kid.
Yes.
Well, don't forget it's his godson, so he's got that vested interest in him as well, hasn't he? So
yeah,
I guess. But like, you look like what other things do we see him? We see him beat up a woman. You know,
we
see him be incredibly rude to some random guy. You know, we see him losing at cards and asking his mate to give him more money.
But he obviously has some honor within his own.
But that's all he has. He went to jail because of his honor. He went to jail protecting Joe. I think that was the implication, and that's all he really has. But they make it really clear early on that Joe and Tony are like family men and care about family and care about the kids. They really do place that early on, so you know that these guys are scumbags. But actually, they do have their own set of honor and set of rules, and it's about, you know, them as a team, as a cohesive, as a social unit.
Because the other guy doesn't rat them out, does he? What's his name?
Mario.
He doesn't rat them out. He doesn't say it. It's just
the guy that went out on his own and stole money for himself
because of this condition called hysteria.
That set though, where he's tied up in it, I love it. Like the basement of the club.
Yeah, same.
Like apparently every location in this film is it's like an existing location.
Oh, really?
There's no sets or anything. Yeah, and so may as well point out that Felipe Agostini, he's the cinematographer, and I think it looks fantastic.
Oh, it does.
Like, apparently, like he got so annoyed with Dassin though, because if there was a nice day nice sunny day or whatever to film in, he'd be like, no, I don't want to film because all I want it to be is grey.
Yeah,
I just want shades of grey. That's all I want it to be.
That's cool.
Which is to the film's benefit, really.
Yeah.
It kind of adds to the mood and the tone of the piece.
And I love how they do all have these like really like distinct characters, the four of them. Like Caesar Dassin is such like a cad. He's so egotistical, and like you kind of love him. He's like got so much personality, and you want to be in that club with him when he's just like bigger than life, and Mario's such like a
he's the showman, the lady.
Yeah, and Mario's such like a playboy.
Mario's like the one you could imagine with a big bowl of pasta.
Yeah. He's a really happy guy, and Joe's such like the muscle, like he's a big imposing figure, and Tony's like that like unforgiving mastermind, like at the center of it all, controlling them, and
he's the one who didn't want to do it originally, and then somehow he becomes the lead of it. Like he's the one they had kind of had to talk into.
They drag you back in. And I love all those little scenes when you're seeing them like prepare for all this and testing, and the kind of, I get so, one of my endearing memories of it is the soundscape of the film, like that ding ding ding, like crack 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 of like a chisel, and then the vibrating of the vibrating of like the alarm, the alarm and stuff like that when they're testing it, and then later on when that's all you're hearing is that ding 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 and ding 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 really like gently to try and not set it off. I just that all that is really like fixed in my memory and stuff like that. Even stuff like Mario, I know that Mario's the big kind of lovable guy, and later on when they chloroform the old couple, he puts a pillow behind the old ladies' heads and kind of, without saying anything, there's a little shrug like, it doesn't hurt to be nice. Like, they're not going to harm them. It doesn't hurt. Like, I love all those little like touches about stuff that brought so much personality to these characters that I felt really connected to them whilst watching basically just a heist scene, really. Like,
yeah. It's funny thinking about like soundscape as well, because I know when I was watching it, I was thinking like, if you made something like this in modern day, like first of all there'd be CCTV.
Yeah.
So that's something that they'd have to deal with in some way. Like, and you like, I don't know, like they put like a looping video or whatever, or they like
they hack into it.
They'd like hack into the Wi-Fi and do it. And also like there'd definitely be some scene where they had like a mobile phone and a hologram had come out of it, and the hologram would solve a combination on something, and all these things that are just like so digital and ephemeral. And it's impressive in a kind of semi like soft sci-fi kind of way, but it's not a guy with a chisel and a sock over a hammer, sweating his bollocks off because he can't hit the ground too hard with it. And it's a shame, isn't it? It's like, I think like how mobile phones like kind of kill a lot of suspension of disbelief for horror movies now. I think it's the same with like heist movies, with all this like all this technology and the digital aspect of everything. It does take away a few elements, I think. It's like the scene in one of the Ocean's movies where the guy is doing capoeira through like a laser grid, and I'm just sitting there like, what? Like, it's not. Am I like? Is that hard? Is that difficult for him to do? Like,
it's not tangible enough. Is it? It's just not tangible enough in like in the kind of watching them physically break into a place, and it's when it just becomes digitally breaking into places, and as you say, using stupid technology that I don't know what it is, like it doesn't, you just don't connect it to it as much.
The Mission Impossible scene's still good though, I think, when he's ascending from the ceiling.
That's not, that's a different thing though. That's like they're basically,
but I think that's different.
It's still like a plan they're breaking
like
in, and they're kind of,
I think the Mission Impossible thing, I think, is actually what I'm talking about, because the thing that makes that scene good is when the rope fails and he goes towards the floor and he has to hold himself.
Yeah.
Because
isn't Ving Rhames like pulling him up? Well, no, it's not Ving Rhames, isn't it?
It's probably
Jean Reno.
Okay, but like there's that moment. There's the moment of like seeing this cool like tech thing, but it's just ropes, it's ropes and a harness, and he's being lowered down, and for a second you have a second to register that looks a bit silly before you're at, you know what I mean? It happens quickly enough that you're kind of impressed that they have it, and then there's the moment of heightened tension where he's an inch away from the floor and he has to hold his body up. And what I'm saying is, like, you can imagine being suspended like that and having to just try and hold your body in that position. And you can imagine, like, on a physical level, like, you understand, like, how difficult that would be to do. Whereas, doing capoeira through a laser grid is kind of, I don't know.
Jean Reno would have made a good Tony, maybe a bit on the nose, but he would have been a good choice for the remake.
We're not remaking this. It survived.
Or Tom Cruise.
But it's the same thing when you were talking about that. Like, there's a bit where the Paris is waking up, the sun's coming up and stuff like that, and Caesar's still working.
The florist
away.
with the big boobs.
And Caesar's still working away, and Tony, who we just think is like this cool, like master, like who's got everything timed to a T. There's not going to be any problems. He's now losing it. He's getting stressing. He's walking about the place. He's kind of poking Caesar. He's like, "Come on, this must be done by now." And Caesar's got no time for him. Caesar knows exactly how long it's going to take him. He knows he's on track. He knows it's fine. Like, and he knows he's going to break through. And I just found it so like satisfying to watch, but because I thought Tony was going to be like the cool one, because he's losing it as an audience, I'm losing it a little bit. I'm like, shit, come on, get it done. Everyone's waking up. Look, there's the florist. Like, you know,
there's the policeman putting the stickers on the thing.
Noticing that car hasn't moved and thinking,
I'm surprised the police didn't go for him straight away, seeing as he'd just come out of prison for a jewel heist. You'd have thought he'd have been like numero uno on there.
Like just rounded up. Would they have had an opportunity? Like, how much time passes after? I don't know. But yeah, you're right. Like, they would have absolutely.
I don't know. I think watching old crime movies, it makes you realise how easy crime was before databases. Like, so
they're pulling out the notebook with all of the registration plates written down.
It's like
on Netflix. I've been watching the Ripper documentary series about the Yorkshire Ripper. And seeing how they catalogued all the information is insane. Apparently they filled up like a football pitch's worth of length in just notes of like people who it could have been. And like apparently the system was that insane that it was just impossible to
That's the problem though, isn't it? Because it's like data is useless if you have no like reasonable way of accessing what you need. Like,
and that's why it's stuff like FBI profiling came in and stuff like that, because they had to try and cut down those numbers. That person, his eyes are slightly weird and he's got a big head, so that he's more likely to be a criminal or stuff like that. Like, it's all because
Fox Mulder.
It's all because of that. Like, because they had too many. They're just looking at everyone in the world and going, "Well, I don't know who it is." Like the whole of Paris.
Yeah, this guy's got a load of Confederate flags and a gun collection. He's probably fine.
He's fine.
Yeah.
This guy,
I did like the fact capitalism. That there's no music during the heist. Like, I thought that was ace.
Yeah.
Like, apparently the composer actually like wrote a piece of music for that heist sequence, but Dassin didn't want anything, and he just did it as a safety net just in case he wanted it. Right. And they screamed both back to back. And George S. Aric, I can't pronounce his name, Aric, he just basically said, "No, you're right. No music on this. It
works so well.
No music."
And then after that, it's because it then has to ramp the story up again. You've got this big tension. They've won, and then it's just like, what the fuck do they do with it? Like, and that's obviously when they bring in, Grutter, and they bring in like the rest of the plots. And I didn't know it was going to go there. I didn't know it was going to be that film, and I knew it was a heist film, but I didn't know it was then going to go into this section of it. And the kind of the downfall of all of them. Because am I right? All of them die by the end of the film.
Yeah.
So and that's like kind of fascinating. I just didn't know that was as I said, I didn't know that was going to happen, and it was so much fun watching that. Frankly, like.
Yeah, and like how and why it all happens, and how it falls apart for them, and
quite violently as well. Really, when you kind of bring in like the real criminal Grutter or whatever, he's unforgiving. When they kill Mario, there's it's like, and they torture kind of Caesar and stuff like that. It's proper like hard.
Because Caesar gives the ring to the singer dancer that he kind of is fancying
that's right.
at the nightclub, and she thinks it's a fake. She shows it to she doesn't show it to the
the guy is the guy whose job it is to keep track of all of her rings. He notices that she's got a new ring. I assume that's his job.
His job.
He works at the club
together and finds out figures out it's Tony and all that lot.
Yeah,
and then they kidnap Joe's kid, and then I love that location though, with the mansion that's kind of like
the half-built place.
Built. Yeah. Well, it doesn't look half-built. It looks half. I don't know what's the word, like
derelict.
It doesn't look built. Derelict. Yeah, the opposite. Like it's just been left. Or it's rotted away.
I've got some notes in.
It's just a series of staircases and walls, and that's it. And it's like.
Yeah,
looks like a little bit of a maze in there, and like with some half-finished rooms where they've kind of locked the kid up in, and he's like,
he's
playing in the sink or something.
It is funny, isn't it, that the whole film, like, I think it's a continuation of what we were talking about, like the elements of it that are satisfying is because it's such like a physical film.
Yeah.
And I think maybe that's just a product of the time, but it's like if they want to find out where something is, they have to like come up with a plan to like trick a guy to go to the place, and then they have to follow the guy, and then they want to keep in contact, but to keep in contact they have to like find a phone to call. And if they want, if they want to pay for something, they have to have the money on them.
Yes.
Like they have to have
that
cash.
That money. Do you know the money in the box in the briefcase? It's that massive. I didn't know. It's so big. It's like an A4 piece of paper for one note. That's
old timey, baby.
Old timey money. I've got some notes here that really crack me up. I want to know what they mean more than anything else. I've got like Mario and Caesar have a dance and a sing, and Mario is totally just like me and Ida can now fuck in every town and the most expensive hotels around.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah.
And I love how, and I've got here the amazing London fence turns up with the cash, and he loves the clown balloon. Don't know what that means.
Yeah, the fucking Groucho Marx ass guy with the glasses with the one dark lens, and it's like, who's this guy?
Oh yeah, I forgot about this guy.
But yeah, and that's just like, I don't know if it's funny, but it's just a really it's a really interesting scene how he obviously like comes in all happy and like expecting them to be happy, but they've just found out that like the kid's been taken, and it's just like, yeah, it's just a really interesting like scene.
I love that though on the bus though, like when the kid gets kidnapped with the mom. And then the people on the bus are watching, and instead of like being concerned that someone's been thrown into the back of a car, they're like, "Yeah, see, look what happens if you let go of your balloon." So there is definitely like a little bit of a sense of humour going throughout this film as well, I think.
Yeah, I think so, definitely. I've got one of my notes here that I couldn't remember what it was about. It just says, "I don't understand how phones work." But I just realised because there's one moment, I think it's when Mario originally phones.
He goes to a telephone exchange thing, and then he's phoning London to phone Mario, to phone Joe or something like that, or I don't know.
Yeah, but then there's another moment where like Mario picks up the phone and is like, "How long to connect to Italy or London or something?"
Yes,
and then he puts the phone down, and then he gets called back.
Yeah, considering
and
he's like,
I'll
phone every 20 minutes. Like, that's a lot of work.
I know, yeah. It's like, that's a lot.
And like, so at the end, Tony goes and saves the kid, and they have this big fight in the cool little derelict place. And he's
no fist fights though. Apparently, Dassin wanted no fist fights in the film, and apparently one of the actors was famous for doing fist fights. And the producers were like, "When is there going to be a fist fight?" And he's like, "Tomorrow. We're going to do the fist fight tomorrow." And just never shot one.
That's because the image of like a big old studio exec with a cigar going, "Come on, where's the fist fight? This man is he's famous for it. We need it on the poster." So he picks up the kid, and Tony's been shot and is dying, and he's losing a hell of a lot of blood. He does one of the most impressive feats of driving I've ever seen while in that situation.
He drives like every person in Paris.
That's right. He navigates that huge roundabout in the Arc de Triomphe without losing consciousness. So, like, I can't do that like now.
But like earlier on in the film, they drive off by the cafe, and he like almost runs over a guy on a moped. Like, they don't give a shit over that.
And like, what I liked as well is like clearly seatbelts weren't a big feature of cars
because like kids all over the shop pointing his gun at him,
standing up on the seat.
And I was so nervous for the kid. I was just like, I don't want the kid to die in this car accident. I do not want the kid to die in this car accident. It's making me very, very uneasy. Please put a seatbelt in.
Yeah.
Like.
But yeah, he manages to just die just as he gets to the apartment of Joe.
Yeah.
He gets back to Joe. He crashes.
And the child is reunited with the mother.
It's
the end.
Yeah, it is totally the most
Finn.
just Finn moment of any film ever. Like, it's just dumb. Finn. Finished. Like, no messing.
Yeah, they pick up the box of the suitcase of money.
So basically, the last thing that happens is the police officer opening the suitcase full of money, isn't it? Like, after that, it just kind of pans and. That's it.
Apparently Dassin was like hired because it was pretty much convenient for the producers, because obviously he hadn't been in work and he was cheap. And then when they were at one of the festivals, he said it was maybe in Cannes that the producer was living up on like in a casino, like spending all his money. So Dassin said, like, can I at least get a little bit of money? Because I think he got paid £8,000 or dollars or whatever to do the film, which is not a lot really, even back then, to helm a feature film. And he said, can I at least get a bit of money so I can play some of the casino games or poker or whatever? And he gave him a bit of money, and he said, "Oh, what day did we start the film?" And he goes, "Oh, on the 18th." And he goes, "Okay, then I'll put all my money on 18." I don't think it's, what's the spinning roulette?
Roulette.
And then apparently he landed on 18, and he lived off that money for quite a while. Then after that,
no way.
Oh, fair play.
I mean, I think we alluded to it, but when this was a huge film, when it opened in America, it was massive, and it still is massive. Like, and it broke the kind of, it started breaking that kind of House of Un-American Activities thing. It was one of the first things that broke the blacklist, that made it so people could hire people that were on the blacklist. We can't go massively into all that history because it would take forever, but it does, because of that, this film not only, I think, really stands up, but has like a big place when you talk about American films. And it's not technically an American film, but I think it is, like, it exists because of American filmmaking and because of Dassin.
Considering the other films that are around in France at the time, it definitely has more of an American vibe to it, I think.
I think so.
Like that more sensibility to it.
I mean,
but still also has its foot in the kind of French side of it as well.
Absolutely
So
has
it's
its foot in nice, French noir.
It's a nice,
yeah. And the lighting and just set. And if you watch, like even I was reminded of this when we were watching Elevator to the Gallows as well, because the kind of concentration on the way the cops move through the streets in Paris and checking up at night.
What are they putting on the? What are they writing down? They're writing something to put on the shutters.
I'm guessing it's the time. I'm guessing that they've checked that it's not been broken into. I can't believe that's how they policed stuff, but it must be. Like that they just simply just walked around and noted the time that they checked that it was still locked and not been broken into and stuff. And
then that notebook they had, was that just the license plates of dodgy folks or something?
I think they would note down the license plates on the street, and if there were cars that are not normally there, that was suspicious to them.
Right, okay.
And especially if they hadn't moved, I'm guessing. It seems so folksy, and I'm like, this is Paris. This isn't like a village of like 5 people. But that's all I could make out, because clearly it wasn't that obsessed over in the film, so clearly it was probably quite normal police work, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like in the absence of really like any kind of modern technology, like as far as like forensics and stuff goes, it's like, what did the police even do, like other than wander around and just be like a theoretical deterrent for anyone?
Yes. Well, to be honest, the only time you kind of have any time with a police officer or a detective is at the funeral, when you see that one detective talking for a little bit, saying that they've all avoided the funeral pretty much. Because
I thought you meant just like in general in life. I thought it was like, cause, I mean, that's also a point. It's like for most people.
Because I think if they were to make this film now, you'd have that kind of Denzel Washington character in Inside Man kind of character or something. You'd have that kind of, or, yeah.
I can't imagine a making film without having a great, nowadays, without having a greater connection to the police, like in some way.
Yeah.
Like that's so like intrinsic to the way that we make crime films now, that it's all about one of them used to be a cop or is still a cop or friends with the cops or whatever. Like it's such a part of the way we think of crime working.
In my house, we call it copaganda. The point I thought you were going to make, Jones, is that actually in people's day-to-day lives, usually for most people, any interaction you have with the police occurs shortly after something bad has happened, not while it's happening or before it's frankly in any useful capacity, and so I think it's probably just like the function of police in I guess it's a high-end neighborhood if it's got this like really fancy jewelry store there. The function of the police there is essentially to protect the private property of rich people, and they need to be seen to be doing it.
It's crazy that the jewelry store actually let them film a heist scene in there, because like I've tried to film in jewelry stores doing bank robbery stuff, and they're like, no, fuck no, go away.
I mean, I can understand
but
that.
No, I don't know about you guys, but I absolutely loved this film. I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, I did. I really loved it.
It's a 5-star picture for me.
It's a 5-star picture.
With an old-timey big cigar. I mean, that was a question.
No, it's not a cigar. It's a thin cigarette. That's what I'm smoking now.
Totally.
With a thin moustache.
With a fresh champagne in a bucket.
Damn.
Even though I had a half-filled one already, they just replaced it with a full one.
Because you're so fancy. I mean, that was going to be my question to you guys. It's like, is this a film like you would just straight up recommend to someone? Like, would you just say to someone, "Oh yeah, you should totally watch Rififi"? That's an emphatic yes from Jones.
Yeah.
I would couch it. I'm always worried about the baggage people bring to films, which I guess was kind of my question earlier on. And so, if I'm telling someone watch this 50s film that's black and white that's in French, I think they're going to think they're going to bring something to that and what they think the film's going to be. So
okay, don't tell them it's set in the 50s or it's filmed in the 50s, and don't tell them it's French.
Well,
and then...
I think the name doesn't help as well, because the name just means nothing. It's just it's a French slang word, you know. So I definitely would absolutely tell people to watch this film. I think it absolutely holds up, and I think it's really fun to watch as well, like really engaging. But I definitely would tell people that. I wouldn't just be like, watch this film with no information. I'd try and knock down those little bits of kind of, you know, baggage that people have about watching black and white French films, basically. Like,
did you know in the UK when it came out, it was paired with the Quatermass Experiment as a double bill? Like, why would you pair it with the weird science fiction film? It's so bizarre.
I wonder if that was to just try and get people in to watch it, because Quatermass was huge, wasn't it? Quatermass was a massive film.
Yeah.
That's really weird. I'd say that, and it's left is like Paul, like, and what was your like final thoughts or review or anything like that? Would you tell people to watch this, or, you know?
I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad that you asked me to watch it. I was expecting it to be good going in because, like, as I said, you know, you wouldn't have asked me to watch it if it wasn't. So, like, I think it's still totally effective in what it's trying to do. Obviously there's elements of it that are dated, but I mean, would I just say to someone like, you should watch this film?
just anyone on the street, hey, you.
I don't know, maybe if someone said that they were into heist movies or they were into like gangster movies or something.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But then, you know, it's hard not to come across as a pretentious asshole of being like, oh, yes, you're into, have you seen this 1950s French? You know what I mean? But in like the best possible way, just to...
No, but you could word it in like, if you want to see where like one of the places it all started off from this kind of style,
yeah.
It's like, you know, check out Rififi. It's like, it's kind of got all these kind of shit going on.
Definitely, I mean, just kind of like in a vacuum... Maybe not, depending on people's taste, absolutely. But then, you know,
I think you should make Ada go and watch it right now. I think that's who you should. Do
you think she'd like it?
I think so.
She'll like the balloon, the balloon scene. That would be a highlight.
Accents,
I think.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, at the moment, she's really into this show called Tic Tac, which is like the most art house thing I've ever seen. It's like. Just like noises and shapes, and then sometimes there's like a picture of like a bicycle, and then there's a jigsaw puzzle of a lion, you know. And I'm just like, wow.
I heard that got nominated for Golden Globe yesterday, actually.
It's like I'm watching it like, now this is art house cinema.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and watching this with us. Then I'm really happy you liked it. Cause it's like because I loved it. It's funny saying to people, watch this film that I haven't seen yet. I'm really glad you liked it, and thank you for coming on and talking to us about it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
No worries.
What's next week then, Liam?
I don't know what next week is. Oh, I do. Isn't it The Searchers? Are we going back to America and we're looking at John Ford?
Yeah, we're John Wayne.
And Mr. John Wayne as well. This is definitely going to be the only John Wayne film we ever cover. And talking about a man who definitely wasn't the House of Un-American Activities, we're going straight from that to the all-American, the most American Republican man that's ever lived. So next week's going to be John Ford's The Searchers.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm going to try and wrap it up. I haven't done this in a while, so I'll probably completely fumble it. So yeah, thanks for listening, and please don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on whatever you listen to us on, whether that's like Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. Is it Amazon Podcasts? What the fuck is it?
I don't know. Yes, sure.
I don't know. YouTube. But like, the one thing I was going to ask though, people, please give us a comment or like, you know, even a written review. We have got one written review. I'm going to say this. If anyone writes a review, I'm going to read it out. So we have one review on iTunes, and it's a 5-star review. And it's, I love how these guys are watching movies that people often don't talk about, but they should. They are funny and easy to listen to. And that's from Liam.
I agree with it still.
Make us not look sad and give us a review that's by someone who other than who actually hosts this podcast.
I liked it. 5 stars.
Now, if you are gonna leave a review and you do want to mention the fact these guys are talking about movies that don't get talked about enough, you should demand that this podcast covers the most criminally underappreciated cinematic masterpiece in history. That is Twins.
There it is,
starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito, which I can mathematically, empirically prove.
Okay, if you want us to do Twins, and I promise you we will, if people reach out to us on Twitter, and that is at Adjust Your Tracking. That is at Adjust Your Track. With a YR, not a your. And yeah, if people reach out to us and say, talk about Twins, I 100% promise you we'll talk about Twins with Paul.
That's a promise. I'll do Twins cast.
On that note, if the picture's bad, don't forget to adjust your tracking.